I'd like to continue now with Mr. No for his 5 minutes. Mr. No, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jackson Lee, Ranking Member Biggs, and members of the committee. Being a journalist from Portland, Oregon, I know domestic terrorism well. Since 2016, I've witnessed how violent extremists from Antifa and others have made political violence on the streets of my home city, banal. Local politicians turned a blind eye to the violence because they believed the extremism was a justified response to the surprise election win of Donald Trump. Local fellow journalists did the same in downplaying Antifa's violent extremism. Today, I ask that you don't do the same. From 2016 through 2019, Portland and the surrounding area suffered dozens of violent protests, mass street brawls, and riots that resulted in serious bodily injuries, arson attacks, and property destruction. By 2020, Antifa exploited the anger around the death of George Floyd and others to launch an unprecedented attempted insurrection in Portland. For more than 120 recurring days, Antifa carried out nightly riots targeting federal, county, and private property. They developed a riot apparatus that included streams of funding for accommodation, travel, riot gear, and weapons. This resulted in a murder, hundreds of arson attacks, mass injuries, and mass property destruction. To put that into context for those here today, similar actions that occurred at the Capitol Hill riot on the 6th of January 2021 were repeated every night, months on end in the Pacific Northwest. In Seattle, Antifa and far-left extremists seized 6 blocks of city territory that they said was autonomous. It resulted in 6 shootings and 2 murders over a period of 3 weeks. In July 2020, then DHS Deputy Secretary Ken Cuccinelli reported to Congress at a Senate hearing that at least 277 injuries have been inflicted on about 140 federal agents protecting the Mark O. Hatfield U.S. Courthouse in Portland. With my own eyes, I witnessed black-clad, masked militants setting fires to buildings occupied by people. The Antifa came armed with homemade IEDs, guns, and knives. They blinded their targets with powerful lasers before throwing projectiles like rocks, glass, and frozen water bottles. Some of them even brought electric power tools to cut apart the fencing that was set up to protect the courthouse. Andrew Faulkner, one of the few federal suspects indicted over rioting charges, allegedly possessed pipe bomb components and a machete at the time of his arrest. The following month, a self-described Antifa member hunted down a Trump supporter in downtown, is shot and dead point blank before fleeing out of state and being killed by federal authorities the following week. He left behind a trail of posts on his social media indicating his desire for an armed conflict with the state, which he viewed as fascist. I'm encouraged today to see lawmakers discussing the important subject of domestic terrorism, but I'm concerned that our representatives are increasingly viewing this through a partisan lens. This puts all Americans at risk. Those speaking before and after me can illuminate and educate us on far-right terrorism, a threat extremely well tracked by government agencies, nonprofits, and journalists. Much less understood is the terrorism threat from the far left, particularly Antifa. Far-left terrorism isn't new in the U.S. It has a long history in the second half of the 20th century, where groups like the Weather Underground, the Black Liberation Army, and the May 19 Communist Organization carried out bombings, robberies, and jailbreaks in the name of anti-racism. Antifa are continuing that legacy today and use the cloak of anti-fascism to shield themselves from criticism and to fool well-meaning people into becoming allies. In September 2020, FBI Director Chris Wray told lawmakers that Antifa is real and that the FBI investigates the threat coming from violent anarchist extremists who identify with Antifa. We should heed his warnings. Domestic terrorism is not partisan. Both the far left and the far right seek to delegitimize and destabilize the republic. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Time has expired. Thank you so very much.